What's up, baby J? I know you're gonna struggle, bro. It is what it is. I'm just gonna have to deal with your psychotic ass. Here, you know what? Do me a favor.
What?
Get your fucking drink.
All
Take
right,
half of that to the face real fast for me, brother man.
I got you.
I chihuahua. All right, Jay. So we're gonna start off on space, bro, because your ass was talking about it earlier today. Enlighten me, and well, first of all, let me get your credentials, bro. I need to know like where your bachelor's degree is from, like what it is, the whole thing. He says I'm a master's in science from TikTok. That's where I got my degree.
I don't know. I always do research on everything. You know how I am about space. I always like to keep updates with the brand new stuff that they find out.
All right, let's hear the updates then, bro. I don't be staying plugged in.
Well, this is just. I've been mostly into like theoretical probabilities about space recently because I was talking to you earlier about
Like the Matrix kind of shit. You're gonna have to numb that down for a hammy.
it's more so like how I was talking to you about if the sun were to be replaced by a black hole with the same mass and the same size.
As what? The sun?
Yeah.
Okay, continue.
It wouldn't pull everything in immediately. It would just sit there. We'd orbit just like we do now. The only thing that would change is we'd have no heat or light, so we'd just freeze to death,
We'd be in hell.
basically.
Okay. Okay.
And it would still take the exact same amount of time for us to get absorbed by the black hole.
Okay, so we were talking about this, and don't take this where you had it earlier, okay? Explain to me, because this is something that kind of baffled me, and I almost want to call bullshit, that black holes don't suck stuff into them like we thought. It's that they get, what is it? The gravitational pull,
Yeah.
like, pulls it into the black hole? And then where does it go?
It just completely disappears. We don't know where it goes because nobody knows exactly what's beyond a black hole. All we
Okay.
know is that theoretically everything that goes into a black hole just seems to disappear and turn into basically nothing but matter.
Okay, and hence them growing in size as they,
Constantly consume more and more
yeah,
things.
yeah, okay. Okay. And remind me, when it comes to black holes, they also absorb light, correct?
Yeah, they absorb absolutely everything. Nothing can escape it, not even light.
Okay. You've seen Interstellar, right?
No.
What?
Mm-mm.
You, being the science whiz you are, have never seen Interstellar?
I don't think
Okay,
so.
I'm going to give you a rough breakdown because that movie is fucking awesome and the most confusing movie I've ever seen in my life. Okay, it starts out Matthew McConaughey, chest bumping and all. Okay, he he's on a planet. I believe he's astrophysicist, maybe just a boring ass astronaut. It's something like that. Um, the planet is dying. Like crops aren't growing. The weather continues to get more and more severe. If I'm not mistaken, the poles are starting to like shift, so it's fucking everything on the planet.
Mhm.
And so they send him out to space. I believe it's with 3 or 4 other people, if I'm not mistaken, and a robot, cool ass robot. Um, and they go out to space trying to find a planet, and they end up traveling. Oh, fuck. It's got to be like, I don't know. It feels far as fuck away in the movie though, because it's like 20 minutes in movie time that they're just zooming, bro. And anyways, they end up on a planet, and or no, I'm tripping. I think I'm getting this movie mixed up with clips I've seen from Martian. The Martian. Anyways, no, Matt Damon's not in it. No, so basically he goes out with a crew and the robot. The robot's real, and they end up on a planet that seems to mirror Earth in a sense. But the thing is, the weather changes and the climate changes are far more severe. So they end up on one planet that's, I want to say, primarily water based, carbon based, and they're in the ocean in their ship, and a huge tidal wave comes up and separates them. It's literally just the robot Matthew McConaughey and a female, I believe it is. Anyways, they get back out of the planet's orbit, and he ends up getting. Long story short, homie ends up getting absorbed into a black hole. gets pulled into a black hole. But that's where shit gets weird because he ends up getting pulled into a black hole, but it's almost as if it's like basically a simple way of putting it is like a time machine. So he ends up flying through, and it's like it's almost like shelves of books, but it's not books, it's just different lights, and it's because he's falling through a repeating cycle of time, like a memory that he has, and he's flying through it, and eventually he ends up stopping, and he like grabs onto the light, and he ends up like he notices that he can push the light, and that a different, so basically like imagine it's like yellow here and like green here. He pushed the yellow, and what happens is it like almost falls off like a book on a bookshelf. And what he ends up finding out is that he tells his daughter where they need to go. But the crazy thing is his daughter's on Earth in her room with a bookshelf, who's she also happens to be super enamored with like space science and shit like that. And that light that he was pushing was the opposite side of the bookshelf. So he was pushing the books off the wall, even though he was absorbed into a black hole, was pushing the lights, pushing the books off, and was literally aligning on the ground, was doing like Morse code on the ground with the lights that he's pushing off to tell his daughter where they need to go to get to be safe. And then somehow, some way, he ends up getting out of the black hole. I think the robot like navigates him through the black hole or some shit. He ends up coming back out, and he ends up living on a world like you remember like Halo, The Ring. Mm-hmm. He ends up getting out of the black hole. He gets to his ship, or somehow he gets to where he needs to be, and he ends up on in the hospital room. And they walk him out, and he thinks he's back on Earth, normal, cool, coy, dandy. He ends up seeing his daughter, who was I think like 12 or 13 when he last saw her. He ends up seeing her now. He's aged maybe a year. She's 146 years old and is on her deathbed. And then the craziest shit is he doesn't even realize it. He walks out of the fucking hospital, and there's a baseball field right in front of him, and a kid hits a home run, and the ball comes out normal, and then it just almost flies up like a parabola does at the very end. It just whoop. Mm-hmm. It does that, and it ends up busting a fucking house window on the other side of the ring above him, and he realizes he's literally living on a fucking space base that's like built like a cylinder. Crazy ass movie, bro. And there is, maybe I did merge some of that with The Martian that I've never seen before, but you gotta watch it, bro, because it's fucking confusing as all dog shit. I don't know where I was going with this, but I just felt like you needed to know this knowledge.
That's fair. I mean, that could be a possibility when it comes to black holes because of the fact that we don't know anything that necessarily a black hole exists for. All we know, it absorbs everything. It doesn't drag it in like forcefully. It just gravitational pull of it will gradually bring everything in. Mm-hmm. So, like I was saying a different time, is one possibility that a lot of people like to say is that a black hole is like the center of all reality, mm-hmm. is what it leads to. Mm. So you can see.
So it's almost basically like a wormhole to the center of reality.
Yeah. So okay. you can see every type of reality, the multiverse, all this other stuff inside the black hole, different timelines, basically everything is one of the theories that there is, because of the fact that we don't know exactly where anything goes. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of hard to tell, but it also kind of reminded me of something about like different dimensions. Mm-hmm.
See, I was going to ask you, could it be something where like it's basically like the theory that what you and I have talked about is like basically when it comes to the multiverse, imagine the multiverse, and it's like each multiverse is its own piece of paper, and you lay these different pieces of paper that in all reality don't actually interact with each other. They merely just lay on top of each other. And then it could be a potential, what could be a possibility, obviously, I don't know the science or any shit behind it, but just me spewing, is a black hole could literally be a situation where as if you took those pieces of paper, like a stack of like 40 pieces of paper or what have you, whatnot, and you just took a pencil, and the pencil represents a black hole, and you just stabbed it through the 40 multiverses, or the 40 pieces of paper, and it's literally conjoining like 40 different alternate realities. I mean, that could be a theory as well.
Yeah, that is. I heard something about that. That could be a possibility. What I was talking about with like dimensions is how we're third dimensional beings with like the ability to see things not with our mind because our mind is three dimensional and we are stuck seeing everything in third dimension. But
Mm.
we know of fourth dimensional stuff, but we
Mm-hmm.
can't conceive it.
Mm-hmm.
So we just can't grasp an understanding of anything that is beyond the third dimension.
Mm-hmm.
Just like if we had a third dimensional object went into a two-dimensional world,
Mm-hmm.
what would happen is they'd see something like a sphere. It would go into that world and it would be
Be
like
a
a sphere
circle.
for us, but it would just be a dot.
Mm-hmm.
So it would just be completely fat with them because it has no height.
Mm-hmm.
And
Or
then it would
depth,
just,
rather.
yeah, and then it would just disappear. Just
Mm.
completely disappear, kind of like a black hole does, where it stays and then it disappears.
Okay. Okay. So do you think, putting it in that light, do you think that, I'm sure I can kind of get what your opinion is of it. With a black hole, would it be a situation where you view it as in it, that it is in it is, like you said, if we were to take something that's three dimensional and place it into a 2 dimension reality, that it would be there, and then it wouldn't be there because there was no comprehension of it? Could that be what a black hole is, in the fact that we see it, but we can only perceive it in a 3 dimensional manner, when in reality it is a 4 dimensional matter?
Yeah, that's why I'm like, it is a possibility because there's no way of us understanding exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, say we were able to reach a fourth dimension, like ourselves, or a fifth or a sixth, then we'd possibly get more answers about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the object itself, we know nothing about. Because we can't study it. We don't know really what anything is about it, how it absorbs light, how it absorbs everything else, where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
We can't understand any of it because we can't grasp the concept of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand, because the basis of it, like, and that's the thing, if for the people that aren't all the way plugged in. Basically, the reason why the theory is that the matter dissipates, and that, not that it dissipates, but that it goes somewhere else, is because you and I know one of the bigger laws and foundations of science is that matter and energy is not destroyed or created. It literally just, basically, in layman's terms, evolves. It moves places, especially energy. Like, that's why the big term is like energy displacement, the fact that it's there and then it's not. It's not that it disappeared, it's that it moved to a different location that we are otherwise unaware of. Hence, and we can get into this a little bit later on, in like the one of the basis of my spirituality theories is that energy cannot be destroyed, it cannot be created, it literally just shifts. So take that where you want it for now. Um, so that's basically why they almost view it as, because the two terms that almost feel like they go hand in hand would be wormhole, black hole,
Mm.
because a wormhole implies that it was there and now it's somewhere else. We're just unable to perceive where the finished destination is.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, wormholes and black holes are perceived as two completely like opposite things
Mm-hmm.
because of the fact when it's a wormhole, you can see where it goes. You can go through it. You can possibly see
So it's more
how
of a
it shifts.
tunnel, like
Yeah,
a lighted tunnel, as opposed to like a black hole would, I guess, in that theory, would be just a tunnel with no light.
yeah. Because when it comes to like wormholes, it would be more so how you travel through dimensions. Like a
Mm-hmm.
wormhole opens, you're able to see it dissipate into another dimension and reappear wherever else it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then it would be like you can go through it. It would be completely safe to be able to go through one. Whereas a black hole, you don't have an exit point necessarily. With a
Mm.
wormhole, it has an
Or
entrance and
would
an exit, but it always goes through the same way. And then a black hole, it just has an
it's
entrance.
in it? Oh, okay. So we're not sure that there's even an exit in it. Okay. Okay. Yeah, because I get, yeah. Okay. I mean, it doesn't make sense, but it makes enough sense to where I can kind of grasp where the basis of it comes. Um, yeah, the black hole thing is very interesting. I think that's one of the things, I know you are highly interested in black holes just because there feels to be more questions than answers. And the thing that's really that would be really interesting is if there was a way to be found that you can send something out into those further regions and actually have it absorbed into the black hole and potentially get more answers. Maybe you don't. Maybe you do. It could be worth the try though.
Yeah. Um, One other when I was talking about like the dimensions and stuff, one other way to do it is like you see a black hole, you can't see anything around it but the light going around it. That's how you
Mm-hmm.
know the shape of it. But it also just looks like a dot.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of like I was going back to about the 2D and 3D. If it were going,
Mm-hmm.
you can't actually see what it is.
Yeah, you can't perceive it as what
So
it's meant to be.
it would more be like a sphere in this reality because we're in a 3D dimension.
Mm-hmm.
It would more be like a sphere, but we still don't know what it is or
Mm-hmm.
how it's created because they just make themselves.
Mm-hmm. So what's the fourth? So correct me if I'm wrong. The fourth dimension is time, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
That's
so
why we
the
live in the third and the fourth, but our bodies can reach the fourth. Our mind alone can't comprehend the fourth.
mm, or we haven't figured out a way to fully comprehend the fourth.
Well, yes and no because of our mind, since it's solely based on three dimensional. Like
Mm-hmm.
everything that is three dimensional are going to like a little bit more spiritually and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Our souls and our bodies can be made into fourth dimensional things
Mm-hmm.
as well as fifth with our it comes to a certain extent where our soul is the only thing that can continuously go through different dimensions
Mm-hmm.
and our mind will forever be stuck in sort of a three-dimensional plane.
Do you think that's just based off of our inability to access further brain power, or do you think that's something that it's just because, in my honest opinion, I feel like it is a situation where we just haven't unlocked the ability to yet. Because to say that it's final seems a little lazy to come to an assumption like that. You know what I'm saying? Like there's things that we're able to do now that we weren't able to do even 100 years ago. That our brains couldn't comprehend 100 years ago that we can now. The idea of data being stored in a cloud was not something that our brains could perceive in even 100 years ago, even 50 years ago for that matter. With just the recency of cloud-based data and internet and all of that. So I do you genuinely believe that it's just a situation that it's an end all be all that is what it is and it will never change? Or is it something that you also would agree that it's just we haven't unlocked the ability yet, due solely based to the fact that we haven't unlocked enough brain power, accessing enough brain capacity to fully comprehend being a fourth dimensional being?
I would say I agree that it is set in stone, but at the same time it's not because we can't actually understand what it'd be like if we accessed our full brain power.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know if we'd be able to travel or actually understand different dimensions, what we'd actually be able to do, what we'd know.
Yeah, you're just doing a shot in the dark kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's more so like um it's kind of like if you basically be able to understand, the more you'd be able to understand, the more you'd be able to figure out
Mm-hmm.
in a sense. So with us accessing more of our brain power, it is a possibility that we'd be able to travel to higher dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, I don't think that we are really capable of doing that in a sense because a lot of people are set in stone that this is how it is. They don't actually try to further
Mm.
accessing
Mm.
more brain power and
So you're
actually
saying
understanding
more of like a society thing as opposed to like
an individual.
yeah, or like I guess human anatomy, I guess you could put it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a lot to think on.
It's more so, that's why I'm like it's hard to tell because of the way our society is going and the way everybody's brain works. It's harder to tell if we'd actually be able to access that.
Mm.
Because if you look at everything we are doing, it seems more so like we started at a higher point and we're continuously going higher, but also going backwards consistently at the same time.
Mm. And you know what I think that is? I think that's a cultural thing, very much so, because I understand what you're saying. To kind of dumb it down, is basically what Jay is saying is we continue to evolve and unlock new technologies and access more of our brain power. The difference is the emphasis put on growth continuously declines through time. That basically when it started us, I guess, us beginning this journey towards learning more about ourselves physically, learning more about the world that we live in, and then also the universe we live in, and how all those different things interact with each other. When it first started in early civilizations, there was a lot of emphasis put on particularly the stars. Um, Whereas now it's kind of become a thing where, to basically put it in layman's terms, when time first started and societies first started to dissipate away from hunter gatherers to more of an agricultural society, more free time, more free will, and an ability to assign certain people to certain roles based off of their talents. One of the key people in the world in their societies were scientists, were philosophers, were the mixture of soft art and hard art, and hard studies and soft studies, or rather sciences. Um, those were like the top guys. Obviously, you had your royalty and you had your religious monarchs, what have you, whatnot. But then as time moved on, and we can even see this now in the fact that when even if you go into a high school, the person that's almost considered cool would be the meathead jock,
Mm-hmm.
and the person that's on the lowest of the tiers would be the nerdy scientist, the nerdy, the nerd or the geek or the weirdo that sits in the corner and reads science magazines all day. Whereas back in the day, that would have been complete opposite. So I definitely get what you're saying.
Like, another way to put it is if you look at it, how it used to be, just like you were saying, they were more in tune with wanting to know more and wanting to figure out everything that they didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And then as time went on, like you said, if you walk into a high school, the jock, the meathead, it's like the top dog. And then you got the nerdy kid that likes to know things like science, about history, everything like that. And they're always pushed down. And you can even look at it in just normal society where it comes to a lot of things that happen in space or science in general.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows about, but they know about the new show that's coming out next week
Mm-hmm.
and when it's going to air, or the new movies or the video games that are going to come out within a couple years, but they don't know anything about space
Yeah.
at all.
Oh no. No, and that's why when you get, and this is something that I'm glad you brought up, in the fact that kind of ties a bit more into my wheelhouse when it comes to the history side of things. Um, Obviously, you and I have had multiple in-depth conversations on both sides, history and science. I think we can both agree that you are more of the science side of things, and I would be more of like the anthropological side of things when it comes to like human society, evolutions, and then more so human civilizations and the way they've both grown and declined at the same time. And so that's why it's interesting to me, because like we stated earlier, when you look at giant, like massive monuments, I think you and I were talking about this earlier this week, in the fact that when you look at some of the eight wonders of the world, the most notable one is the pyramids, the Great Pyramids of Giza. We've spoken about this in depth. The fact that they are built so precise, yes, obviously they're wonderful pyramids, but once you look into the science of things and how to the nth degree they're built, like the blocks, the size of the blocks and their dimensions alone mean something and have some sense of correlation to the stars, the directions they face, the alignment they sit at, the altitude, the elevation, the longitude, everything is set to match the stars. Whereas now, half the fucking people can't even find the Big Dipper.
Mm-mm.
These are people that had mapped out where they lived in society based off of, obviously, necessities, water, food, plant life, um, and shelter. But another thing that played into that was where their alignment was amongst stars and their appreciation for and curiosity, like you were stating earlier, the will to understand what goes on above us. So that's kind of my perspective on things.
Well, one other thing that you can look at in history is after the pyramids were built and everything, a lot of things started to change, which sounds kind of weird. Once we discovered Orion's belt, it's pretty weird, but
It's not
once,
weird when you get into it, though.
yeah, and everything just slowly started to decline. We started doing less and less with the stars. We started just living our lives on Earth and
Making
not
it,
curious about
yeah,
anything.
exactly. Almost like it became, how would I put it? Okay, this is how I would explain it, even though we don't have anything to back it up, as is most of this podcast outside of Jason's knowledge. Um, the fact that it was almost as if a kid who's trying to learn about something comes in contact with something that frightens him on the subject that he's looking into, and then from that point forward, almost refuses to engage in that particular topic from that point on. And I'm almost curious, and I would love to go back and see why it was, like you had stated, such a sudden, like, and the crazy shit is it stopped not just in North Africa and Egypt. It stopped globally, almost as if everyone came to an agreement in that moment, in a moment in time in which, nah, fuck this. There's something up there is telling us we do not need to know. And it makes you wonder, is that something that they had seen in I'm gonna try and stay away from the alien side of things for at least the front
Well,
half of this.
okay, you can bring up the alien side of things because one thing I guarantee 99% of the people on this planet actually don't know is that the Air Force actually changed their logo and it has a UFO in it now instead of just being
Well, we're
like,
gonna get into the alien side of things, but I'm stating just particularly early, like in the early part of this conversation, it's like trying to understand why why it was such a haste thing, because you had massive amounts of communities globally that all kind of came to this conclusion around the same period of time. I don't want to say the same day or anything along those lines, but they almost all came in time of a almost too easy of a conjunction to where they said no more. And the point that you brought up, it was particularly across all of the bigger societies. It was always Orion's belt that was the front door of why they needed to stop going as in depth as they had into the stars.
I think we're the only civilization that we know that actually kept pushing even after we discovered everything about that.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of weird if you think about it, because throughout history, you'll see different civilizations literally discover the exact same things at different points in time, but they didn't know about it beforehand
Mm-hmm.
because they thought everything else was lost. So they discover up to the exact same point and completely stop.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what it was, no matter if they were the only civilization looking into it, completely stopped.
Mm-hmm. And it was globally, and everyone had reached it. Like I said, probably if I was to really try and think back on it, it would had to have been within 100 years of everybody. Um, but something I want to get into a little bit as well, especially going back to Egypt and Orion's belts and the pyramids in particular, is the fact that there's an old story. Now, don't quote me on this because it's been a while since I've read it, looked into it. So my memory's a little hazy when it comes to it. But originally, when those pyramids were built, they were topped. Obviously, they were topped in marble. So they were limestone, smooth limestone. They weren't as blocky as they are now. But also, the tops of those pyramids were also covered in gold.
Mm-hmm.
The theory was that when you passed on, your soul would rise through the chambers of the pyramid, it would go out the top of the pyramid and it would ride down this path up into Orion's belt, and that was where you would reach what basically they would term as enlightenment in the spiritual plane, where now you are no longer, like we had stated earlier, you were no longer a three-dimensional person. You shed the skin of a body that, like we had stated earlier also, that could not comprehend four dimensions. You shed that skin, you shed that body, and you ride along on the path up to Orion's belt that was guided to you from the pyramids, was where you started, and you rode the belt and you went to Orion's belt, and that's where you had reached spiritual enlightenment and started to understand not three dimensions but all four in conjunction.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's kind of crazy if you think about it because of the fact that you can hear all these stories about how it was all presented and everything like that, but at the same time, you can also see where all that stuff started to change
Mm-hmm.
in a sense. Because I had a conversation with you earlier, I think it was this week as well, with the pyramids and everything.
Mm-hmm.
How I was telling you how the pyramids were meant for everybody. It was kind of like
Mm-hmm.
healing, and it was for you to be released. But as time went on, and this is where you can say like everything started to shift without wanting to know about the stars and stuff, because as everything went on, it did a complete 180 on the entire civilization at that time, where royals were only allowed to. And then if you look at it from that point on, once royals were only allowed to, you don't see anything about the sky. You don't see anything about anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
It's only about how they lived and what they did.
Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing also to mention and kind of piggyback off that, um, obviously right now we're kind of in the phase of the conversation where we're presenting different ideas as to why those that shift had occurred. Obviously, like I had stated earlier, it could be a sense of fear, something they had come encounter with, basically scared them off. And I'm not banging the drum that it's strictly aliens. There's a plethora of different reasons as to why they could have been scared off of that continued journey. But it could also be arrogance. You and I both know, as human beings, there is ego, and part of this goes back to the spiritual side of things, and the fact that eventually you become arrogant and you become numb to certain factors that you would otherwise carry in more severity than you would others. It could almost be a situation to where there was this sense of arrogance, this overwhelming arrogance, like we and basically like a simple explanation would be you get the flu once, you go to the doctor, they help you, you get better, you go back. 2 years later you get the flu again, but you can't afford to go to the hospital, so you just thug it out at home, and then you get better. Okay, when the third time comes up, yes, you can afford to go to the hospital, but in the back of your mind you're thinking, well, I didn't go last time and I was completely fine, so is there really a need for me to go back a third time? It could be a situation like that, to where, like you had stated, the pyramids were used for healing and it was for all comers. Where maybe it was just a situation where somebody had stated, "Oh, I didn't need to use it anymore, like because I'm fine without it," and then it just dropped off. And then the royals decided that, fuck it, we'll make the pyramids ours. And it could be because you and I both know, looking through the history of Egypt and the stars and how they coalesce with one another, the fact that at the end there is no correlation to the stars like there was when it had originally been erected. It's a lot of different theories with those pyramids, and that's why they're so interesting, and that's why I'm so enamored, especially with the Nile civilization. Not just Egypt, but the further south you go into Africa, you encounter different tribes that share similar beliefs but also have their own kind of takes to it, but yet share the same timeline, almost like we had stated earlier.
Well, that's one kind of thing that is how the pyramids completely align with the stars it also aligns with something else. It aligns with the pyramids that are also on Mars.
Mm,
Exactly. Like aligns to all that perfectly.
mm.
And then if you go and think about it, it's like, well, but you said you don't want to go into depth about aliens and stuff like that. It can be
No,
more
we
so
no
like
we
a,
we're gonna get into aliens. I'm not saying we're not talking aliens. I was just saying in that particular aspect, like try and leave the extraterrestrial input off to the side to really kind of delve into the human consequences and the actions that led into that on those particular subjects. But when
okay.
it comes to like, I'm sorry, it's going to happen. Like the fact of the matter is, like you had stated, for there to be pyramids on two different planets that are, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not next door neighbors, correct?
Yeah, okay.
Oh, okay. Still, nonetheless,
But okay, if you put it that way, those pyramids are over 300 million years old.
aliens, Sammy. You think it's aliens or do you think it's early human evolution?
Mm, I would say it's her early human evolution. Because if you think about it, why would we do so? All right, let me go a little bit off a tangent
Go
about
for it.
Mars.
This is all you.
It's more so like according to how I told you earlier on this week, the radiation levels on Mars are something that did not happen naturally. Because the xenotonic levels are completely different as if it were a natural nuclear reaction.
Mm-hmm.
It is only a reaction that was made by atomic bombs, and if it was made naturally, there would be craters on Earth, on like that planet.
Mm-hmm.
No craters; it's all smooth.
Mm-hmm.
So that would lead to, as you said earlier, civilizations or possibly earlier human evolution coming from Mars, which is a possibility because we don't know exactly what's happening, how everything came to be. We don't know anything
And
about
there's
that.
not a lot of intelligence once you exceed 42,000 years in human time.
And it's crazy to think about that, the fact that there is radiation levels made from nuclear bombs, and when they dated it over 300 million years ago, but there's nothing on the ground because it was exploded in the air.
Mm-hmm.
But if you also look at Mars, it had the exact same type of atmosphere and everything that Earth did.
Mm.
But what they say is that the nuclear bombs that were exploded completely almost obliterated the atmosphere. There's still a little bit there, but there's enough carbon that it's just not going to come back. And the atmosphere is so weak that it's not going to hold anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like that is a possibility for life to come from Mars
Mm-hmm.
because we have the pyramids that line up exactly on Earth, line up with them, line up
Mm-hmm.
with the stars. Like, why would we think about that unless somebody would teach us that?
Mm.
Why would we have an understanding of different things, such as space?
So early on in
And
human civilization, too, mind you.
and it throws people off because they were built and they continued to just let it die out. Because why would we let it die out if unless something showed us that we should?
Mm-hmm.
Because why would we do something that we're advancing at, completely actually understanding,
Mm-hmm.
grasping a concept of something nobody has ever done before at this point in time, and then just let it go?
Yeah, just fall to the wayside.
Because you're already at that point so far ahead of your time that you don't need to stop.
Yeah, you would figure that common sense would dictate that when you become so advanced in a certain field, common sense dictates that you would continue to advance yourself in that particular field, which is why I go back to what was encountered around that time to ward off continued advancements in the understanding of space. And that's the thing that's really bizarre, because another thing as well is when you look at the time gaps between significant knowledge gathered, particularly for the stuff in the stars, the gaps are massive. I mean, we're talking thousands of years. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. The pyramids were erected, had finished being erected in, I believe it was between 300 BC and 300 AD, if I'm not mistaken, in that time gap. And then the next time you really hear about advancements in the sciences and the knowledge gathered for the stars would have been 900 years. There's nothing. Now, yes, I understand that when it comes to science, there are going to be significant time gaps from um, significant knowledge gathered advancements, I guess you could say. But you and I also know that once there's one breakthrough, there tends to be a thing where it picks up momentum and you start answering more and more questions because the answer that you found based off one hypothesis, you can apply two different theories that could also be correct. So normally you see one, and then you see two, and then you see three, and it almost becomes exponential in the advancements you see. Yet there's massive time gaps between each individual, I guess you could say, breakthrough.
That's why it throws me off when you think about it, because of the fact that since they all stopped at the same point, why didn't we stop at the same point? Because we discovered the exact same thing, but we kept going.
Arrogance.
But at the same time, if there was something that did stop them, who's to say it's not going to come back because we didn't listen to their warning? Or possibly another advanced civilization was telling them constantly that they get to that point to stop, to let us discover more as time progressed. But it kind of doesn't make sense at the same time, because if they would have continued, how much technological advancements would have been compared to now?
Mm-hmm.
We could have possibly been, we're not even a type 1 civilization. We could possibly be a type 1 or going to a type 2.
Mm-hmm.
Because of how far back that was.
Oh, yeah, you figure. Oh, God, yeah.
When you talk about discovering
That's
new
1,600
things,
years, bro.
and you talk about discovering new things, what happened in the most, what was it, 1986 was when they first launched the other, what was it called? The satellite.
Oh, Kepler?
No, that wasn't when they launched Kepler. It was, there were two of them. There was, I think they called it Probe 1 and Probe 2. They launched those to be like twins. Kind of. They launched them, 2 weeks before the other.
Okay.
To send out of space to pick up different information.
Mm-hmm.
But in that time, you think about it, they sent that out. We've already started advancing. We started going to the different planets. We started discovering different things about different planets. We learned exactly how a universe is formed. We learned what happens after the universe is formed. We have photos of what happens with a supernova and the creation of all life. Mm-hmm. So if you think about it, why would they just stop? Is if they continued, we could possibly be, let's say, a type 1 civilization who has complete control of the planet and possibly making it do as we want and our solar system.
Yeah, it could be a situation, yeah.
Because if that were the case, we'd be able to harness our own sun. Because there's a lot of theoretical possibilities that there's other civilizations out there, which I personally do believe there's civilizations out there. Because if you think about it, we are like dust because of how many stars, how many planets, how many suns, everything that is out there.
Mm-hmm.
You are literally like a speck of dust when you look at the whole universe.
Mm-hmm. And not only that, but there, like we had stated, obviously when you consider the multiverse, there's infinite possibilities. However, when you also look at the sheer size of our individual universe that continues to expand at an unimaginable rate, you would have to presume that there's something like there's more than just us. That would be so fucking arrogant to sit here and say, out of the quadrillion stars and the innumerable solar systems that inhabit that same space, that they're no. Mm. Because the thing with science as well, the basis of all science is that science repeats itself. Nature is in of its own a cycle of repetition. So in that theory alone, you would have to imagine that we're not the only carbon-based life form, and not only that, but that's the other thing to take into consideration as well. How do we not know that there's other different types of life forms that aren't carbon based?
Yeah, that is true. That is a very good point. We have no way of knowing because we can't go out and see it, though.
Yeah, but do you believe it's solely a can't thing, or do you think it's also a situation where it's a won't thing as well? Especially with, and this is where we'll get into the aliens, because of the fact that the first time anyone really heard of Area 51 was when Bob Lazar left Area 51 and let the world know what the fuck he was doing in Area 51. And for those that don't know, haven't gotten into depth on it, I would highly encourage looking into it. But Bob Lazar was hired on as an engineer in Area 51. He was one of the most credentialed engineers in the United States government facilities, and he was brought on to reverse engineer alien technology that they had encountered and actually supposedly have stored on Area 51. And so you've got to imagine there's no guarantee that that's a carbon-based life form in of its own that he came into contact with, especially considering that was, I think Bob Lazar came out in the mid to late 80s, early 90s was when he first came and started to let out what was going on in Area 51. That was 30 fucking years ago, and we still are just dumbfounded with the technology that they supposedly have in Area 51, allegedly. So it makes you wonder. Again, it goes back to an arrogance thing. There ain't no fucking way. I'm firm in my belief that there is no fucking way. There are too many things that have taken place on Earth, and this goes back to civilizations, early civilizations, mind you, that we are in nature connected to the stars. That with the alignment of the pyramids, that can't simply be because you read it in a fucking book or that you looked up at the stars and just guesstimated. That has to be from a very old knowledge, and the only way we could have interacted with that, because the science is pretty firmly based that in that region of the world were predated to be between 45 and 60,000 years old in that particular region where the pyramids are built. How would we have knowledge of something that vast and that advanced that long ago?
Honestly, I wouldn't say that we probably would.
Aliens.
It's so far out of perception.
I'm sorry. If you fucking asked a group, if you were to put the same criteria as the same knowledge that we have of the group that built the pyramids and ask people to do that today, even with the technology we own now, it's still fucking impossible. You hear about it all the time. Anytime the pyramids are brought up, there's always a conversation of, even today, we can't do that shit with the heavy machinery we have. Excuse me. I'm amped up. Like, it doesn't make fucking sense, bro. Don't make no damn sense.
It doesn't make sense at all, because you think with the technology we have as opposed to the technology that they had back then, we should be able to do it easily. But no matter what we do, we cannot make it align just like they did. It aligns perfectly. Not even the slightest bit off. That's what throws most people off, because they'll be like, today we are so advanced in technology that we can do that easily, but we still can't, no matter how hard we would try. it's like what, a 1 in a billion% chance for us to be able to do that, because it would always be something that could go wrong, but they did it right away.
It would basically be like walking up to a fucking toddler and telling them to build a fucking 14,000 piece Lego set without an instruction manual, and they'd have it done flawlessly with no errors. And they had to overcome particular obstacles. I mean, the limestone that they crafted the pyramids out of are 80 fucking miles from where the pyramids lay. And those individual bricks weigh anywhere between 3 to 17 tons, each one that they lay. You mean to tell me that a group of fucking nobodies moved a 17-ton, 34,000-pound fucking slab of stone 80 miles to its final resting place and placed it perfectly in that whole thing?
It just wouldn't make sense.
No.
Because it's not like they were gigantic people. No, they were the exact same as us.
Smaller.
Yeah.
Evolution has dictated that as time moves forward, we grow bigger.
Well, there was also something about that with evolution. It says that we actually were bigger, but we grew smaller, and now since we're adapting to the gravitational pull of the planet, and we're starting to settle, we're starting to get taller again.
That makes sense. But the only and let's kind of expand the criteria also as well. The pyramid is not the only. That is not the only architecture on this planet that makes scientists go, "What the fuck?"
Stonehenges.
Henges in particular. Yes, Stonehenge. You have Stonehenge in Europe. You have Göbekli Tepe in Turkey.
You have the heads in Easter Island.
You have the heads in Easter Island. You have the pyramids in Central America. You have temples in India that have fucking echo chambers to dissolve the tectonic movement of earthquakes so the temple doesn't fall.
And it will remain there forever.
I mean, it went through one of the worst human recorded earthquakes on the fucking planet. And it stands like there was nothing ever to happen. It's a 200-foot hole they had burrowed into the ground in the middle of the echo chamber. So that way when the ground shifted, not only did it not collapse the tunnel, but the tunnel, or the pyramid in itself, or temple rather, it also allowed air to move up through the tunnel through a set of wind chimes so the people in the village nearby could hear that there was a fucking earthquake coming. I'm sorry. That is fucking wild, bro. We know San Francisco is one of the worst places in the world to live for that particular reason. I'm sorry. Ain't no fucking scientist come out and said, hey, I'm going to build homes that have a built-in warning system through the fucking ground to tell you when an earthquake is coming. And here's the best part. When an earthquake comes, it's not going to fall down.
That makes it's so far advanced, and we still don't do that now.
And that temple is predated to 800 AD. That's 1,300 years ago.
It just doesn't make any sense how they were able to do any of this stuff. How they were even to dig 200 feet down
into a perfect hole that would dictate, if you're digging a hole that big, the bottom is going to be narrower than the top, because how do you expect to get out if you don't have a gradual incline to get back out? No, it's completely the same from the top to the bottom, almost as if they had a massive drill that bored a hole, took the dirt and moved the dirt, and then they built the fucking temple over it.
It just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. Or the fact that there's monoliths that were in the process of being built and stopped being built, and the size of the fucking monoliths that are still in stone, you can see them starting to carve them out of marble, still sit there, are taller than any fucking monolith that still sits on the planet today. And this is the craziest part, most of these places that are very in tune with the stars, very in tune with the architecture behind that, and the monoliths, the pyramids, the temples, all take place in what we would consider the birthplace of the agricultural society, Mesopotamia, Northern Africa, Southern India, you've got Western Europe. Those are all places where the agricultural society boomed. You have Greece, you have Rome, you have India, you have Mesopotamia, you have Egypt, that are all superpowers in their own right during those times. And it's like that's the region. And then you go out to the New World in America. You don't come in contact with the same kind of architectural advancements that attach to the stars like you do in the old world.
And that's one thing we today will still never understand. No matter how hard we try, we will not be able to understand anything.
Better build a fucking time machine, Hardy J, and you better figure it the fuck out, bro, because they ain't no. There's literally no, like, we have no way of finding it out until we find it out.
That is fair.
You don't know till you know.
Which at this point in time, I highly doubt we'll be able to figure that out.
I agree with you. And I think it's also one we don't know, and also we're not looking.
That is also fair. Well, because we're so tied up in different things that you can say some of them are really beneficial for us. Some of them will help us advance. Some of us will also be like world changing things that we're actually looking into.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the majority that's, like I said earlier, new phones, better computers, stuff like that. It's just a distraction.
Shit to help the time pass, not to better society as a whole.
Okay, let's put it this way. A lot of the time that they say that they can go, they want to go to other planets and discover different things about planets,
mm-hmm.
or even our own Earth, the oceans.
Mm-hmm.
They say we don't have enough materials to do that. We don't have enough metal. We don't have enough of anything.
Of the labor, the scientists that want to head those particular expeditions.
But at the same time, we have enough metal to constantly make.
To make a new fucking iPhone every 4 months.
And then new computers, new game systems. They have enough to do literally all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have enough to discover different things about space and our own planet itself.
I will state that the metals used primarily in the mass production of products we are speaking of are not as... The metals that are used to build a fucking spaceship or a high-pressure submarine are a little different. Yes, there's obviously components in cell phones that would be very vital to those particular expeditions. However, the thing that's really kind of baffled me, and everyone should know this, is the fact that these particular science programs that are, like we had stated, putting a lot of emphasis in. For example, you have Elon Musk and Tesla trying to find a way, one, to the moon, to live on the moon, to build an atmosphere that's copacetic for human life, but also a way back to Earth on the same craft. Because normally, Jay and I know this, most people know this, that when you get on a spaceship as an astronaut, it's pretty much a one-way ticket. You go out there, and the ship that you take out there is not the same ship you're coming back on. So that basically is what what I'm trying to get at is a lot of these in-depth science projects that take place trying to better understand the world we live in and the worlds that we could potentially be inhabiting here in the next 1,000 years, they're all privatized. They're all subsectors, and they're all owned by individual people. They're not the same as how the first moon landing was, or even the last moon landing was, and the fact that was NASA that ran that. That was a government subsidiary that funded the expeditions to better understand the world and the worlds we live around. Now it's all become privatized. I mean, Jeff Bezos is looking into it. You have Elon Musk. You have all these different billionaires that are trying to push forward human society, whereas that should be a job of the government and, quite frankly, should be a job for every human being that inhabits this planet.
But they don't.
No, because it's a fucking sense of arrogance.
I would say that, and it's a sense of a fear of also, You know how people, like you said, with arrogance, a lot of people feel like they deserve more. They feel like they should have the most power.
Mm-hmm.
If everyone were to do that, who's to say who would have the most power? Nobody would. We'd all have the exact same.
Yeah, because it doesn't conform to the same societal expectations as it would.
And with that, it's a lot of people refuse to do it because of the fact that they would lose power.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more so people are so hell bent on wanting to control.
Yeah,
Just
rule the world.
Humans in general are just like that.
Mm-hmm.
They have the need to want to control anything and everything that happens. It's why people go to war and everything else. It's like we go to war with people that we can't control to control them.
Exactly. And that's where I kind of go back to the human side of things and the history side of things. There's a very cut and dry belief that I have, which is there's two types of people on this planet. Okay. You have the learners. So you have your Albert Einsteins, you have your Stephen Hawkings, you have your Galileos, the list goes on and on and on. Neil deGrasse Tyson. You have all these different people, but then you also have the yearners, which are the people that yearn for power. They yearn for the societal hierarchy. They yearn for the control. You have your presidents, you have your prime ministers, you have your politicians and your government officials. Your celebrities can even fall into this. They yearn for the power. They want that power. So you have the learners, like I had stated, and back in the day, the learners carried that they were the top of the food chain, the society, the social hierarchy, whereas the yearners were at the bottom. You're not benefiting the progression of this society, this habitat, this culture. Now it's the yearners lead the charge, and the learners are subjugated to the nonchalant bullshit repetition of the social kind of pyramid that we've built now. It's almost done a complete flip. So basically how I would put it is the learners are at the bottom of the pyramid, but it was an upside down triangle back in the day, and now it's flipped up to where the people that are the yearners are at the top. And that's where it gets into the human side of things. But the beautiful thing of it is, and I kind of attribute this both to humans' curiosity as it ebbs and flows, but also the growth in spirituality, in the fact that now it's starting to come back. It's starting to come back to where the learners are starting to take over again. They're starting to force their way through the social kind of hierarchy, as I keep stating. And now the yearners are just kind of like, what the fuck? Like, this wasn't how this was 20 years ago. No, because now we're starting to see the growth in, I mean, for instance, you could use climate change as a thing. The boom that has received over the last 5 years has been innumerable. 5 years ago, all anyone gave a shit about was the Super Bowl and keeping up with the Kardashians. Now people are looking at, well, you have climate change, you have the understanding of the human mind and the power that it yields, and that how just undiscovered we really are of ourselves. And you're starting to see that with the legalization of marijuana, the legalization of psilocybin mushrooms, and the growth in DMT, and all these different substances that allow you to reach a state of mind that you're otherwise unable to receive in a sober kind of setting.
That's one kind of thing that throws everybody off nowadays, is because they're so tied up into the fact that
Kim K got a fat ass. Had to throw that in there.
they're so tied up into the things that are, let's say, like materialistic things. That's all everybody will ever talk about and always will, always hold more dear than mental things.
Mm-hmm.
Like knowledge. It's something that a lot of people, you can even put this in like high school.
Oh, yeah.
Because like definitely in like school in general.
Yeah,
It's
nobody gave a shit about who had the best grades. It's who's got the flyest J's on.
yeah, it's
Me.
all about it's all about who got the nicest car, the coolest phone, the best games, all this other stuff instead of like, okay, well, what do you know about space? What can you do later on that can help with society?
Exactly. There's a selfishness attached to it as well, and I'm glad you phrased it like that because I was struggling to get there. Was the fact that it's become very selfish. It's not. Nobody's worried about the growth of mankind as a whole. They're worried about
How to make more
yeah,
money.
how to make more money, how to get into a situation where they can be the Kim Kardashians, they can be the I don't know, fucking Brad Pitts and
Like
Matt Damon's,
Kanye West.
Kanye West. That's what everyone wants to be. Is this fucking self-made millionaire, self-made billionaire. Whereas, in my belief, and I know we share the same sentiment, is I couldn't give a fuck about the money if I push society as a whole forward, even 5 years. That's incredible.
Because if you think about it, what's going to come with you? What's going to actually stay on this planet longer? Your money, your cars, your house? No, you can see throughout the course of history, all that stuff has been destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't last. But if you look at it, the inventions of the light bulb, the inventions of electricity in itself, the first trip to space, all this other stuff actually stuck
Yeah,
with us and we
computers.
continuously keep going.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so like the money. Money changed throughout history drastically.
Mm-hmm. You figure
So
money used to be pelts back in the early days. Like that's how you knew you were wealthy. Not only was it pelts, but you want to go even further back, it was the color in which your clothes were dyed. Like that's how you were designed to show your wealth and your power. Was the color that you wore. That's why when you see films that are historically accurate, the kings and the queens and the princes, they're all wearing purple. They're always wearing bright colors, and the peasants and the gypsies and all these different people, they're in dark clothes, dirty, raggedy. That's how you showed your I guess you could say social hierarchy, your social
your status.
yeah your status. Whereas now it's like, oh hey bro, I got fucking $180,000 in my bank account. It's like, wait, you don't even have it cash? Nah, bro, it's numbers on my phone.
And that's just doesn't make sense to me.
Fucking insane.
I just don't get why people are so tied up with money. It's literally not going to go anywhere with you. Like, would you rather
It'll
have a
go
legacy?
with me to the dollar store, bitch.
Would you rather have a legacy of knowing that you earned so much money that when you pass away, it's just completely gone? Or you pass it down? Yeah, you can pass it down, but what's going to happen later on? That money could just disappear.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why the question is always, what's worth more, money or knowledge?
And it's always going to be knowledge.
It
But
always
in
will be.
today's society, in general, even a little bit, like not that long ago in different societies, it was money. Because people are so tied up with money.
Mm-hmm. And you see that, and that's a very. I'm glad you brought this up because it's a situation where when you look at when money was like we spoke on, like how today money is, it's all money, 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 money. Money's great. Nobody hates money. I don't love money. I love the things money brings me. Okay. That's the thing that people don't understand is the things money brings is wonderful. Some of the things they can bring, but it's not money you love. It's the experiences. It's the enjoyment that you can bring to your life and the people that you love that is so valuable and so important. But the knowledge, like, okay, how would I put it this way? Would you rather have the knowledge to cure somebody's illness, or would you rather have $40 million and watch the person you love pass away because you don't have the knowledge to cure them? I think the resounding answer culturally across every person on this planet would be fuck the money, dude.
You'd rather have the knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Yet it's not framed in that light.
Mm-mm. It's framed that with money you can do whatever you want.
Yep.
With money, with enough money, you can help anybody. But if you look at it, there's a lot of people that get sick
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people that will pass away. No matter how much money you got, if your illness is worse off, you're not going to make it.
Exactly.
So what is that going to do for you? It's not going to do anything. Instead of having the money, would you rather, like you said, have the knowledge? Because at that point, it's already too late.
Yep.
And of course, you'd rather choose the knowledge to be able to live, to be able to do all this other stuff to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
But by then, it's just like all you got is money because that's all you were focused on.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I completely agree. And I think that's why it's a very interesting dynamic that we have to fight with day in and day out. The struggle is very much so real. But like all things, it comes with a balance. Because you and I both know we can't not conform to the world, how the world is, in the fact that it's so much financial. So if we were really to try and guide society forward through knowledge and the wisdom that comes through certain breakthroughs, in order for us to get to that point, we have to be financially well off, because it's not a lot of people are going to fund you on your research unless you're trying to find the cure for fucking cancer or whatever you're in. If it's something that's huge, that grasps, like, that affects everyone's day-to-day life, no one gives a shit about it.
Exactly.
Like, if you were to try and start a GoFundMe to try and figure out the history behind why the Aztecs disappeared, nobody gives a shit. The niche that's there is so fine that they're not going to be able to help you either.
Nope.
You have to find the cure for cancer. You have to find the cure to stop global warming. You have to find the next clean fossil fuel. That's the things that everyone wants to grab on. It's very headline oriented. And that's why and I think this goes back to what we were stating in the drop offs, the ebb and flows in scientific advancements through the years of human society. Everyone conforms to, you get to a point where everyone conforms to the society in which they live. And then one of them just says, fuck this, I got a question. Why does an apple fall from a tree? Why does the moon orbit us in the manner it does? Why is it that when we sail 14 hours across the Atlantic Ocean, when we left, the sun was up. When we got there, the sun was still fucking up. Like, does the sun just swallow us, or does it stop? And that's just it, is the fact that we're gonna have to go through a period of time where the legwork put into the science of things just sits on the sideline until there's the person that just says, fuck this, I got a question, I don't care what the answer is, I don't care what anybody thinks, I'm finding this out on my own.
See, that's one thing that I kind of get at the same time. It's like, this is going to go back to how I was talking about brain power and stuff. If you put it like that, it's more so people stopped asking those questions for who knows what reason. As I could say, when it comes to materialistic things, like we were talking about, it distracts you from wanting to know because you feel like you have everything at the grasp of your fingertips. And there's a lot of things nobody knows. Like, there's a plethora of things that you can ask somebody, even a professional, on it, and they won't know what the hell to tell you. Because people like that, they receive a certain amount of knowledge and then they're done. because they get so invested in materialistic things. And that's why I say, when it comes to brain power and us being able to fully use our brain power,
Mm.
I don't think we're ever going to be able to, because we're so tied up in materialistic things. It's a distraction from us wanting to gain knowledge because we feel like we have all the knowledge at our fingertips. Like, you can hear what the older people and older generations be like, you have all the knowledge at your fingertips because we have computers, we have phones, and like all this other
Yeah,
stuff.
we got the internet. Yeah,
Yeah, we have knowledge, but we don't have knowledge about everything.
this
There's
is.
so much still that we don't know, and
Mm-hmm.
we choose not to do it because we feel like we have a plethora of knowledge that is just there
Mm-hmm.
that we don't need to know anymore.
See, and that's a good point you bring up, because there's a difference. I'll use a quote that I live by. Knowledge is to know tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is to know not to put a tomato in fruit salad. Okay, we have the knowledge. We don't have the wisdom. Because if we had the wisdom, some of the things that we occur in our day-to-day lives are fucking, they don't make sense. We should already have a solution for them, yet we don't. Because we're not putting the knowledge to use. We're just sitting on it idly by and saying do do do, like just waiting for the fucking stars to align, no pun intended, and for something to come from the sky and give us all the wisdom in the world. I would love to say it won't happen, but clearly you and I are of the belief it definitely has already happened fucking once.
More than that.
And so it's a situation where it involves change across every culture, every society, every individual person. That's going to have to spur the golden age.
If you think about it, though, it has to go across every person, but every person that has tried to do that is labeled as insane, completely thrown off to the side, and nobody cares
Mm-hmm.
because so people are so hell bent in their ways that they don't see any other way.
Mm-hmm. See, I think though with the popularization of understanding, that's how I would put it. The popularity and understanding has allowed for it to. I am of the belief that if somebody came out and really just pushed forward, like, hey, this is what we need to do. This is how we need to start changing the way we think and the way we come across certain situations in our global conquest of more knowledge. I feel like in today's day, that would be taken more seriously and taken more respect than it would have in older, like, prior years, if you understand what I'm saying.
I get what you're saying, but honestly, I do think that is a possibility, but I feel like people, like I said, are so hell bent in their ways that they would hear it, think about it, and then ask, why would I even care about it if they don't even know? Because, like I said, people like knowledge, only not as many people on this planet are so invested in knowledge as it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, where's your proof? And if you don't have the rights to like make that proof known at that point in time,
Mm-hmm.
they blow you off. And if you even show them proof, how do I know it's real? They ask so many questions, they are in such disbelief that they will never actually be able to understand what you're trying to show them
Mm-hmm.
and get your point across in any way, shape, or form unless you have money.
See, and this is why you and I make a terrific duo, in the fact that you are more of the, like I had stated earlier on, you're more of the science side of things, and like the fact based. How I would put it was, you're in the hard science. So you're the person that is more in tune with the numbers, the statistics, the research, the data, whereas myself is more into the soft science. So like your social studies, your archaeology, your just I guess it's more the social side of things, and this is why it's important that we have these conversations, both you and I, but just everyone as a whole, is to really sit down and start to understand where the middle ground is for us to really, because eventually if we don't get off our fucking high horses and go back to what got us to this point and what continues to push us forward, we are going to end up in a situation where we're looking around going, well, how the fuck did we get here? We don't know anything.
Yeah, we're just going to cease to exist because we don't have the knowledge to stay alive.
Mm-hmm.
And one other thing that I find completely absurd, sorry for interrupting you if you were about to say something.
Oh, no, you're good.
One other thing I find completely absurd is when you're in school, when you look at history,
Mm-hmm.
it is completely absurd because all that they will teach you, majority of all of it, what does it consist of? Like, actually consist of that you can use.
Now, that's an interesting thought. So this is why, excuse me, this is why it becomes a kind of a person-to-person thing. Okay, so for myself, I'm not so woven into the history of humanity as most history is taught to you. History is taught to you to remember fucking dates and occurrences. Me as a person, I'm very built around around recurring things, recurring themes, the habits of humanity, the kind of something that stays and is just, like I said, repetitious. That's what I look into. I look beyond the dates and beyond the event in and of itself. I look at the people that aren't mentioned in the events. You know, you have your events like the Battle of Little Bighorn. Everyone just remembers the date and remembers Custer. I'm thinking about the people that led into that. Why did we get here? What led into this event? What are the repercussions of this event? So I'm not necessarily the best person to ask on the history side of things because I don't look at history in the same light others do. I look at it as a way to learn from the past and try and make better decisions for the future.
Well, okay, that's fair, but what I was trying to get at with that whole thing is you actually did prove my point. Battle of Little Bighorn.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, everybody remembers that.
Mm-hmm.
Remember Boston Tea Party. There's only one thing that everybody remembers. Wars and the date something was invented, as well as the date of the wars. History that you were taught is mostly consistent
Okay,
in
I see
teaching
what you're
you
saying.
that all it is about war. And then it briefly mentions the date that things were invented.
Yeah, bro, that one went right the fuck over my head. I mean,
I noticed it did a little bit because you went off on that tangent, and I was like, "That's fair." I was like, "I kind of get what you mean, like where you're going with that."
That's how I feel, bro. Like, fuck
but
your
like,
date.
that's what I'm saying is, you can see the shift in the way that we are taught. It's all about wars, and only the date that things were invented, not how it was invented.
Yeah,
That doesn't
the
go into
process.
depth about anything other than wars. That is the only thing it will actually go into depth on. Because it will tell you how many people there were. It'll tell you how long the war was fought. It'll tell you how many people were remaining. It will tell you the courses of the events that led up to the war a little bit. Not very much. But it will also just list everything about the war.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing about what happens after. And then if you look at when people in history, when they taught you about the light bulb, what did they tell you? Just a brief summary of everything that had happened. And then what did they switch to? A subject about war. It's never something that actually has to do with any technological advance or anything benefiting the human race. It's only war. And that is all the schools will actually teach. That's why I'm like, it throws you off because in today's society, they talk about us being able to have knowledge and wanting to know more. Then why do they teach us only about war if we're supposed to know more about how to help the planet, how to make technological advances in the planet, when it's consistently the same thing, only just showing that it's going to constantly happen and repeat itself?
Yeah, with bigger weapons and more people.
Just like the news, all you hear about is when we're going to war.
It's easier to manipulate, and that's the thing. The easiest way to manipulate a society is through fear. Exactly. War inhibits fear because you're the it's the fear of losing your life. It's the fear of losing your land. It's the fear of losing your liberties, the people that you love. It's the fear of it. And we're not going to get off into this because otherwise this bitch is going to go for 19 fucking hours consecutively. But I definitely understand what you're saying, and that's why it needs to be. There needs to be a change from the grassroots level in the fact that we as the people, and I'm not speaking just in America, I'm speaking globally, need to get back to what we do. Like Graham Hancock is a huge believer, and I encourage anyone that does not know who he is, definitely look into Graham Hancock and his beliefs, because him and I share similar beliefs in the fact that we need to get back to what got us to this point. There's an old saying, do what got you to the dance and you'll find the ball.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, bro. You want to know why? I just made that shit up on my own, homie. Trademarking that shit. Sean Seward at me, bitch. Like, do what got you to the dance. The minute you get away from that is when you stop succeeding. We've seen it through thousands of years of history. When we're on our P's and Q's about the science side of things, the advancements are insane. And it's not just scientific advancements, okay? Societal advancements. As people, we start to understand each other better. We have breakthroughs, okay? And that's the thing, is as the further you get away from that, the darker the path gets. I mean, there's streetlights for a fucking reason. Follow the streetlights. They've been laid for us. Yep. So why is it that everybody is misguided to walk in the fucking dark?
I don't know.
That's the interesting shit about this. That's why these need to be more prevalent conversations among everyone. To just sit down, and I get it. Some people are just like, oh, fuck this. I don't know anything about it. I don't want to learn about it. It's a lot of work, yada, yada, yada. That in itself dictates the problem.
That's why I'm like, when it comes down to it, it's more so the society as a whole, or the whole planet, is just so bent on their ways that they won't look at the other paths. Because let's say it this way. When you go on a trail, you have two, say you go into this is a better way of explaining it, a fork in the road, right and left. That's it. But what happens, or what can you see, or what can you discover if you continue going forward? Because we're so taught that we have to follow all these signals, we have to go one way or the other, but why can't we make our own way? To actually discover new things, to actually see what's going on, and actually see what's going out there.
Excuse me.
So that's why I'm like, it doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because no matter what, everybody's going to follow. Like, for instance, with school, they either say you don't go to college, you're not going to do really anything. You go to college, you can possibly become wealthy and all this other stuff. They don't tell you can be in a whole lot of debt. They don't tell you all that other stuff. They don't tell you the bad things about each path, or the good things when it comes to the other path.
Yeah.
Because, like, let's say, how was Apple invented?
So from my understanding, it started as a seed. They watered it. It grew into a beautiful tree. And then the apple fell from the tree on Isaac Newton's head.
No, I'm talking about technology.
Okay, I'm gonna butcher this because I find it utterly hilarious. The apple was not the apple. Apple was created by Bill Gates. No, it wasn't. It was Steve Jobs. I know. And I don't know where you were going with this. I would just let you run the show. Sorry, bro.
Everything that we use nowadays wasn't made from somebody that goes to follow one of those paths. They took their own path.
Oh, yeah, dude, I would have totally fucking missed that.
Apple was made by somebody, just like Microsoft and all that other stuff, by one person doing their own thing at their house, in their garage, possibly. It's
in my
like,
spare room.
Yeah. That's why I'm like, everything that you are taught, they show you that some people can do that, but they will still push you towards the path of doing it the other ways. Like, you're stuck in a way of either going forward or back instead of going to either side. So that's why I'm like, it is completely absurd to the fact that our society and the world as a whole is so hell-bent on the idea that you have to go a certain path, otherwise you're screwed. You're not going to do anything. You're not going to make it. There's so many people that did.
Oh, absolutely. Probably more that did than didn't.
Exactly. It's like, you can look at people, let's say, some scientists, even nowadays, not say, who would be a better representation for this? I went to college.
Mike Wazowski.
We can use our parents, for instance. So they went to school. They did all this other stuff. But are they known for doing something that is extraordinary? Are they known for doing something that is completely out of the books? Or did they just take one path and fit perfectly in with society?
I see where you're going. I was trying to find something to fight you on, and I was going to use your mom, but then you just fucking threw one caveat there, and I was like,
they chose to follow the exact same course as the people before them, as if we're in a type of, what is it? I'm trying to compare this to, as if somebody was like a kind of like a dictatorship, but not a dictatorship.
oh, no, I'm totally fucking lost. I'm spun around.
Well, let's say I'm talking about how you're forced to go a certain way. How in different societies and stuff, they'll force you to go a certain path.
Okay. I'm following you.
But if you don't follow that path, you say to get set behind. And all the people that left that path, nobody really knows what happened to them, or they did something amazing.
Okay. I don't know an example for you, but I definitely understand where you're going with this. I'm glad you dumbed it down for me. Hey, bro, I'm literally just the guy that's sitting in every podcast that I do, bro. I'm just like, yo, y'all some smart-ass people. This is incredible. I'm not smart. I'm just chilling.
That's why it throws me off. Like, you can look at through courses of history. We can even relate it to the Bible, if you would like to. Moses, Noah, they all did something completely different than what their social norms were. They went off and did their own thing, did something extraordinary on their own.
Yeah, Moses killed his son.
He also made water and followed the text. And
hey, bro, you asked me something crazy, bro. He killed his son, and Noah made a big-ass boat.
But what happened when Noah made the boat?
It floated.
And everybody else told him he was crazy and absurd and tried to, like...
No, I definitely get what you're going with. I just got to be over here and give you some grief every once in a while. No, I definitely understand what you're saying. I get where you're going with this, and the fact that we're definitely almost culturally pressured into taking one of two paths and guided that path one is going to be the one that bears the most success, bears the most fruits, when in reality, like you were stating, the guys like Steve Jobs, you have homie that made Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, you have Mark Cuban, you have all these, Elon Musk, you have Jeff Bezos, you have these incredibly profound people that don't follow path one, and they don't follow path two half the fucking time either. Like Steve Jobs, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve Jobs never even graduated high school, correct?
Nope.
And yet he owned one of the biggest technological powers outside of, at that point, IBM and Dell. And now it's the leader in technological advancements globally, based out of, like you were stating, his mom's garage. And when you get away from that, you allow yourself to lose the scarlet shades that society forces upon people. And that's when you really get to see the advancement in human society.
That's what I'm saying. Like what you were saying earlier, it's all based on fear.
I agree.
Because, like, if you put it like that, okay, what are the possibilities that you do? If you actually put forth the effort, gain the knowledge, it is not impossible.
Mm-hmm.
But with social norms, it's like they label it as something that is physically and mentally impossible. It is untangible. And it's not something that is going to actually happen. But you have people with these stories that prove that it can happen.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to be looked down upon just because
you didn't follow the path.
Yeah. So that's why I'm saying people are so scared and so hell-bent in their ways that they don't see any other way than those two paths.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very, it's something that definitely is not a situation where you can fight it in one day. If you kind of follow what I'm getting at. Yeah. It's something that we have to work towards. We have to find our own ways, and this is a good thing about today's society and the fact that the growth in people taking their own paths. I mean, I'll use this. I'll use this show for instance. 5-10 years ago, nobody was making podcasts. It was radio shows. It was TV shows. It was sitcoms. It was shit like that. Now you are starting to, as time moves forward, it's a podcast, and what I would consider a podcast is really, truly the rawest version of a melting pot. In getting away from the echo chamber and coming into contact with multiple different ideas, multiple different beliefs, and that's a wonderful thing for the growth of society. And that's where we are now, and that's why I have so much faith moving forward that we're going to get back to our roots and continue to push the envelope and push civilization and push all these different areas, all these different key points that each individual deals with on the day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and one thing I will say is when it comes down to the paths that you have to take, a lot of people will try to say that they want to take that other path.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that they don't realize is, okay, other people made it the way that they did by taking that specific path for themselves. And I honestly think in society as well that when they take that path, they feel like they have to follow that exact same steps.
Mm-hmm.
Which one thing they don't realize is you still take your own way. You take your own steps. You don't have to follow somebody else because then it's going to seem impossible.
Yeah.
So then it comes down to the point where now you got three paths.
Mm-hmm.
And it's either one of the ways.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to do it a certain way either way. Because that's why I'm like, yes, society's changing. Yes, it's doing all this other stuff for people to be able to do what they want.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, when people say they take that third path, what are they doing? Still copying another person. So that's why I'm like, one thing about the past is it's constantly changing, but you also have to find your own way. Otherwise, it feels impossible.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It's a very compelling argument you make. I think the only thing that I have to push back on that is, yes, there's, and I'll use myself for example. Obviously, podcasts, like I just stated, they're starting to grow. There's a lot more popularity in them. A lot of people are doing them. But the thing to that is everyone kind of follows their own. They follow somebody. They take bits and pieces from podcasts. So for myself, I take my biggest inspiration on the podcast things is the JRE. And I would like to say that the podcast that I formulate the most of my blueprint with would be the Rogan podcast. However, the difference is the fact that I'm a little bit more grassroots. Obviously, some of that is just due to the lack of connections when it comes to doing what he does, which is have fucking incredibly intelligent people, incredibly talented people on, and eventually I will get to that point. But the thing that I don't tend on straying away from is giving the little guy a voice, allowing somebody that doesn't yet quite have the recognition that some of these other folks have. And so I definitely understand what you're saying, that as time moves forward, there's more paths, yet you're still following a path that's already been blazed. However, the thing that I push back on is that, yes, even though people will follow that path, a lot of people find their own way. So yes, they'll go, let's say the path is a mile long from start to finish. Okay. A lot of people will go, some people will go 3/4 of a mile down that path, and at the last quarter mile is when they'll split off and they'll walk in the dark. There will be other people that walk 1/4 of a mile down that path and then walk the rest of the way 3/4 of a mile on their own. So I get what you're understanding, but I almost look at it as a tree root. The water will follow the path up until a certain point, and it will create its own path.
See, that's what I was kind of saying, though, is how you need to find other paths.
Yeah.
But at the same time, people are going to be still focused on following that path. Mm-hmm. So when they don't do what they wanted to do when following that path, they don't know where to go. So what I mean by that is when you're following a certain path and you don't know where to go, sometimes people will just stop. Because they'll look at people that have made it and they'll just stop instead of taking that own path. Instead of, they'll just sit there, be like, why didn't this happen to me? That's what I mean when I say paths are changing and like all that other stuff. Like, you still have to find your own path after you do that. Because like you, for instance, you didn't start off with recording off of you got mics and stuff that you decided to record off of. So you took that extra step further to do it yourself, as opposed to, I'm going to use my phone, or I'm going to use
I still do use my phone, but...
Well, I mean, like, for audio.
No. I definitely get what you're saying.
So that's why I'm like, it's changing, but at the same time, it's kind of staying the same. And a lot of the time, people don't know how to change it. That's why it's stuck in the same place.
That's a fair point. I mean, the only thing that we can benefit from at this point, though, is just the open communication and the fact that everything seems to be hopefully getting to a situation where everybody, like you had stated, it starts moving starts moving in their own way, starts carrying their own weight, and starts following their own lane. I mean, the whole conversation start to finish is a very interesting way, in the fact that it all goes hand in hand. And I'm definitely intrigued by the different kind of I guess my mentalities that come into contact with that. It'll be interesting moving forward, seeing kind of the competition in beliefs that follows this. I know that following this will be a lot of one that gets a lot of interaction, just because there's a lot of theories in this episode, and I definitely appreciate the fucking insight that you have on, like I had stated, the science side of things, and just progressing the I guess the script of kind of what your belief is that needs to be taken back into the hands of everyone, and how we need to start shifting mindsets and shifting motivations. It'll be interesting to see what the ripple effect is. And it's good to have conversations like these, especially like I had stated early and often, in that it needs to be a situation where it's not just you and I having these conversations. It needs to be friend groups. It needs to be school meetings. It needs to be in a lot of different medias.
Just everybody in general.
And so I know this one was interesting. I know we have a few more coming down the tube. It'll be those ones will be a lot more of the spiritual side of things because if you don't know, Jay's a fucking wizard. So definitely be on the lookout for that one. I'm hoping to have that one set up and ready to run in about 3 weeks. I don't mean to cut it short, but I really gotta fucking pee.
That's fine.
But yeah, we'll definitely rehash the thoughts we had. We'll definitely be paying attention to the different kind of data that comes in, and just kind of have that interaction, and we'll post a kind of a sub page to where it's a very open kind of community in which people can exchange thoughts and are trying to escape the echo chamber. And yeah, man, another one.
One thing people should always remember is that following the social norms, a lot of people wouldn't, even in past civilizations, wouldn't have done the things that they did.
And like Jay said, don't follow no social norms, bro.
You gotta be your own person and do what you gotta do.
Be your own you. And be, like my boy Logic says, carry these 3 motives deeply in your soul. Peace, love, and positivity. Until the next time, Baby J, party hard, live young, and stay a baby. I'll see you on the next one, brother man.
Sounds good, man.